Hello, North America, and welcome to another segment of the VIP Business Stock Show. I'm Don Emilio Zeno with my lovely co-host, Joanne Serponi. Hi, Joanne. How are you?
Good. Good morning, Don.
And today, where we left off on the last segment, we want to talk to you about business in writing always. Joanne, you know, I can't overstress the fact that, and this stems from the fact that too many people get in trouble sooner or later because they let their guards down. Because it's you'd like to trust people, and I'm guilty of that too. I wish I can trust everyone, but the truth is, you cannot trust everyone. And the fact is, or especially if there's a certain amount of friendship in business,
Yeah.
what happens is that you let that business friendship of some kind interfere. Oh, you know, I trust Joanne. Of course I trust Joanne. But you know what? You don't want to risk that business friendship. So what you do is, all right, Joanne, I'm promising, you know, we've done business so many times in the past.
For sure.
And over and above that friendship, we just want to write down a sheet of paper. I mean, we don't need, no disrespect to lawyers, of course, but we don't need a lawyers every time we want to do some business. Otherwise, business would take forever by the time they look at it, and $50,000 later. But something in writing, they call me one-page Don because most of my contracts are one page.
One page.
Yeah, I shy away from that because what basically says that here's a memorandum of what we've agreed to in business, so that in case one of us loses it, you know, or you forget, you're not going to start, hey, I told you this. No, you told me that. No, I told you this. And the arguments commence, and then you are at risk of losing that business friendship. Instead, if you put it in writing, you can always say, Joanne, why are we arguing? Come on, let's go and have lunch. Isn't this what we agreed to?
Exactly.
Now, if you don't want to agree to this anymore, there's a clause that says, you know, a 2-week notice or something like that. You understand? There's a shotgun clause of some kind protecting both parties.
I agree with you, Don. And I think oftentimes is your...
Excuse me, folks. I'm having my second cup. Go ahead.
I think oftentimes it's exactly what you were saying like this. I like this one page, Don. It's because what happens is that we say something, we agree on something, and then like 2 years later, it's only natural
you
forget.
Yeah.
And then what happens is like maybe one party always out of that, because obviously in a relationship, a business relationship, you always have the two parties, and there's always one party that feels that he's been shortcut. Because even after when they do sit down 2 years later and re-agree on certain elements that maybe weren't tended to, what happens is like there's always someone that says, no, I'm so sure that I had said this, and now, well, I'll give in and agree with him, but technically that's not the way it was.
You sound like my in-laws. 31 years later, they're still telling me, you told my daughter this, you told my daughter that, and I say, hey, Ma, I even forgot what I had for breakfast. And you're remembering what I promised your daughter then? I said I had to, or she would have never married me, you know?
Yeah.
So in writing all the time, it's very important. As a matter of fact, talking about prenuptials, very important, especially, you know, that's another kind of business, you know, the wedding business.
Oh, for sure.
You know, you got to make sure you do it for many reasons, and for business, for example. And I want to give you a quick example, okay, Joanne? And you'll understand this because Joanne is a trustee here in Montreal with 6 offices, so I think she's learned a thing or two about, you know, matrimonial regimes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And just to give you an example, because I knew a long time ago, and I mean 31 years ago, that I was going to go in business, I opted for a marriage contract under the Quebec Civil Code. Now, I used to be an estate planner, portfolio management executive, believe it or not, 35 years ago. So I've worked for the banks, I've worked as a portfolio management and estate planning, and that was the best school. And I'll tell you why. Because in business, folks, and I know that if you're listening to this here VIP Business Talk Show where it pays to listen, I'm going to give you some great advice. If you're going to go into business and you have a lot of assets like a home, land, monies in the bank, etc., incorporate at all costs, because the corporate veil, veil, right?
Yeah.
The corporate veil. I was thinking veil. The corporate veil will protect you against creditors for the most part, unless, of course, you are accused, God forbid, of premeditated, fraud or something of that nature.
That's very rare.
But a corporate veil, so it's a great insurance. It is worth it for you to have that incorporation. Secondly, if you have a lot of assets and homes and this and that, and you have a good loving spouse, you may want to look into a marriage contract. Like, for example, in my case, in 1990, I renounced La Loi du Patrimoine, a partnership of equests in Quebec, and I opted to have a second marriage contract. I really didn't feel like spending that money, but it was money well invested. Why? Because unfortunately, there's a lot of, and I can say it because this is my own show, there's a lot of assholes out there that want to try and steal money from people. And they see a nice big, chunky man, says, this guy must have a lot of money, and you understand, to be that heavy. But the fact is, it's protecting thy assets from the people that will find anything, especially when lawyers put their, hands on it.
But it's good. You never know.
Right, and it's not because you're protecting your assets that you're trying to do anything wrong. It's the smart way to do it. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Sometimes it's structures even for tax purposes.
Right,
and,
exactly. But in writing,
yeah.
we're kind of deviating from the subject matter, Joanne, but I just wanted to FYI use that particular case in order to inform you viewers that you always have to do it in writing to protect yourself and your partners and whomever you're doing business, and not to be shy. Like, for example, I used to get people, what's this? You don't trust me? I don't trust you. I don't trust you. I don't trust your grandmother in heaven. I don't even trust myself in case a brick hits my head and I forget who I am in business. In writing. And remember one thing I've learned, and folks, especially you younger guys that are starting off in business, if they don't want to put it in writing, it's because they're ill intent. They're there to try and find an escape route, because sooner or later these same people are out to get you. Trust me and trust no one.
That's a very good point.
In writing. And I don't mean $100 or a couple of $100. That's BS. But when you're talking thousands of dollars, in writing all the time, or don't do it, no matter how attractive it is. And, in writing all the time.
That's a very good point. I never thought of it a little bit that way, but you're so right.
Cheers.
Because sometimes, well, cheers. And I got to take a sip there too if we're cheering.
So what happens in writing all the time, because it keeps good friendships, it keeps you, well aligned, and it keeps that friendship going, and there's no embarrassment. And of course, you can always use tact and diplomacy. There's a polite way, and not be condescending like I am, of saying, no, I don't trust you.
No,
but most people would like to say that. No, I don't trust you, and that's the truth. No, I don't trust
if we
you.
Go back to the one-page Don.
Yeah.
Remember, we're also listeners. It's very important that this is done. Like the advice that we're giving you here is done also in a very protective information for you, the business person,
right,
in the exchange. But in the end, we have to also remember that what we're suggesting, like this is like day-to-day business that you're doing, and it's like a one-page, going back to the one-page Don. Then, of course, if you're going into a huge contract in some other industries, of course, then there's the attorneys that get involved, and
right,
it becomes a different magnitude. What we're trying to give you from our experience, because in the end, what we're suggesting to you, we've lived it, we've gone through it, and we've made these errors. And they're not really errors. They're
How come
just,
you don't have white hair like I do? Go ahead.
There are things that we've done in business and we've learned, and that's what we're sharing with you. So the one page will not really give you any, I don't think you'll run into too much difficulty in your exchanges to get this one page document done. And if you're in larger contracts in business, then please, you must get your accountants and your lawyers involved, because you can't just do it on one page.
Folks, unfortunately, this is all the time I'm being hailed here that we've got to wrap it up for this segment. But on the next segment coming up soon, we're going to be talking about analyzing business risk, which is kind of a continuation of what we're trying to say here. So in the meantime, grab yourself whatever drink you prefer, and we want to wish you all the best in health and in wealth as we come back to you here on the VIP Business Talk Show. God bless you.